Am I ready for love? Am I ready for a relationship as a new Christian? These are questions that I would have said yes to as a new Christian, but I was completely wrong. The reason I was seeking love when I was a new Christian was because I was trying to fill this void inside of me that I thought another human being could fill. Even to the point that I told someone I love them. And I'll tell you that I held this pain and rejection from my past, from where I'd been hurt in the past from women, girls, and I'd been rejected by these girls. I'd been hurt by these girls. And I thought that if I had one of those girls, that it would fix those pains in my heart. But it was not the case. And I would actually pray to God, God, give me this relationship. God, I just need this person in my life. And pretty quickly, I started to realize that it wasn't going to happen like that. And I was definitely in a bit of a false reality. And I'm just being real here. But the reason is what I learned through that only Jesus can truly fulfill that longing inside of us. Only Jesus can fulfill those hurts, those pains. And we truly have to ask ourselves, why do I want a relationship? If it's to fulfill something, if it's to complete you, it is the wrong motives. And it was painful in the sense of I had to deal with these hurts in my heart. I had to deal with these pains from rejection. But Jesus touched me with his love in those moments. He didn't condemn me or make me feel bad that I was seeking those things. But no, he just showed me his love and allowed me to heal. Because I get it. When you're new, you might think, oh yeah, it'd be good to get a Christian. I'm just going to speak in the sense of from a male. If you're a woman, just put in your perspective. If I say wife, think husband. I was like, it'd be good to get a Christian girlfriend and whatnot. And a lot of people would probably think like that. And I've met people, I'm just going to say this now as well. I've met people that have had a relationship early in their faith walk and they're still together. They're married. They've had a kid. They're doing amazing. I actually asked the bro the other day, I was like, hey man, do you regret getting into a relationship as early as you did? And he told me no, because, they got to go through things together. But for me personally, and this is really aimed at those younger Christians, I was 18 when I became a Christian. You might hear that then, you're like, yeah, you definitely weren't ready then. I had a lot of things to learn. I didn't know how to live a godly life. I didn't know what it meant to be a husband. I definitely didn't have the maturity. And that's what it comes down to as well. Are you mature enough? And part of maturity is healing, is not being dependent on other people. Because what Christ started to show me as he filled me, as he filled that void, and as Christ started to go into those areas and bring them up and allow me to deal with them, the thing he showed me was his love. And when we have Christ's love, we do not need love from the world. And now, I'm not dependent on anyone for love but Christ. So every love that I receive from other people is a bonus. But that doesn't dictate whether I'm okay or not. That doesn't change how I feel if someone doesn't love me the way that I thought they would. And now I don't have these expectations on people because Christ has shown me his real love. And that was a hard place to get to. And I'm just going to be real in that area. It was a hard place to get to. But I need to learn that first before I could get a wife. Because if I had a relationship early, it wouldn't have worked. I would have had the expectation that they were going to fulfill that thing in my heart that only Christ could fulfill. I would have had that expectation for love from them. And I would have put it on them. And ultimately, I was putting a burden on them that only Christ could fulfill. Anyway, I wasn't ready for a wife anyway in the physical areas. I didn't have enough to provide for a woman. I definitely wasn't as good around the house then. I didn't know how to love them. And what Paul actually says about this in the Bible, there is a few other scriptures that are quite aligned with this scripture, but I'm just going to do one. And that's Ephesians 5:25-29. And it says, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. I'm just going to stop there for a second. Do you know what Jesus did for the church? He died for the church. He laid his life down completely for the church, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as the Lord does the church. There's some powerful instruction in that scripture. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And there's also other scriptures that talk about the wife being submissive. But we look at that, some people may look at that word like, hey man, I'm not being submissive. That's so anti-culture. But the thing is, if you're a husband and you're loving your wife as Christ loved the church and you're completely laying your life down for her, is she not worthy of your submission? And if he's being led by the Spirit, if he's being led by God, and if he's completely just loving you, like think about how Christ loves us. And that's what I want to get into. Christ's love for me showed me that I can love myself. Because people lack self-love. But the thing is, if I'm worthy for Christ to love me, I'm worthy for myself to love me. And then further than that, if Christ loves that person, that taught me how I can love that person. And it all comes back to Christ's love. And ultimately, being in a relationship is about Christ being the head. So the Bible says a cord of 3 is not quickly broken. And that cord of 3 is you, your wife, and Christ. And ultimately, Christ is that strongest cord. He's the one that holds you guys together. And he's created marriage as a covenant. And the covenant is between you, your wife, and God. And the reason God hates divorce is because a covenant should not be broken. And I will say now, there is exceptions if you've been married for a long time and things go sour. I've seen people get divorced, they've got married again. There is grace for it. But ultimately, if you're a young person, you need to be looking around. Okay, am I going to spend the rest of my life with this person? Because the thing is, when we're young, we just go, yeah, like easily. And then who can relate when they're 14? They had their heart set on something like, this is something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. You turn 15, you completely lost interest in it. Like, I know it's a bit different when we get a bit older. Like, I'm 21 now and I'm into different things when I first got saved. And I'm in a different mindset to when I first got saved. And I'm in this mindset like, well, when I get a wife, I got to look at like, okay, am I going to spend the rest of my life with them? If I live to 80, that's 59 years that I'll be married to this person. It's not just 3 years. Like, because the thing with boyfriend and girlfriend, you can leave that relationship anytime. There's no covenant formed. In the Old Testament, a marriage was actually formed when they went into them. But now, people go into people when they're not in covenant. And the Bible also talks about that when you go into someone, you become one flesh. There's many people that have become one flesh with people and then they never talk to them again. Or they become one flesh with someone on one night. They don't see them again. There's ties to that. However, if you've done that, I'm guilty in my past. God has set me free. God has cleansed me from those wounds. I now believe that I'm innocent in that sense because Christ has forgiven me. So if you're a new Christian and you're ever getting condemned about your past relationships, past one night stands, there is forgiveness for that. And God can restore your innocence when you're going for a wife. And you can stay faithful to that wife. I'm going to say this as well. In the waiting, prepare. Because there is requirements to being a godly husband, that you lead the household. Build qualities of a leader. Build your relationship with Christ. Build your finances. Build your work ethic. Build your mindset. Read books. Read the Bible. Always be better in yourself. And the right time, Christ will bring that person into your life. And I don't use dating sites, but I'm not really desperate for a wife. I'm more looking to Christ now, and I'm looking to develop myself. I'm learning these things. However, some people do go on Christian dating sites. It works for some people if you're that desperate. But however, the Bible also talks about, if you look at the story, Abraham, he had a child with his maidservant Hagar, which became Ishmael, which was not God's promise. But Abraham tried to work in his own strength to receive the promise. However, God still said, I will bless your Ishmael. But if he had waited, he did have that child with his true wife, Sarah. So to say that, really ask yourself, am I ready for love? Like, if you asked me then, like, are you ready for love? Like, yeah, of course I am. But I wasn't. But now it's like, I remember when I was praying about doing this video, it was like, God asked me, are you ready for love? And I was like, well, maybe not. I probably still have some things I need to work on. But have I come a long way since when I was first saved? Absolutely. Have I built a lot of those qualities that I talked about? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I'm fulfilled by Christ. Christ completes me. There's a common term in the world like saying, oh, you complete me. But if we're relying on someone else to complete us, if they leave or they go the way, like, that's a wrong analogy. That's a wrong way to think. Christ has completed me. Christ fulfills me. Christ has loved me. And everything else is additional. And I will say, it would be awesome getting a wife. Like, it's a desire that he's put in every one of our hearts. And, if we look to Paul, he's like, I wish that everyone remain as I am, stay single. Like, come on, Paul. We can't all be like you, man. And this is your desire. Submit it to God. Work on yourself. and most importantly,